Hey guys, it's Audra. Welcome to another video. So today we are going to talk about the topic of sex. This video is not going to be crude or, anything like that. So if you are younger or you're kind of getting uncomfortable around talking about this, don't worry about that. I want to talk about this today because I've gotten a lot of comments lately about sex drive and losing your sex drive and why you don't want to have sex, why you're not even physically attracted to another person or anything like that, specifically anymore, okay? And I know I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out there because I know some people are probably going to comment and say it's totally fine to be asexual, not everyone wants to have sex, blah, blah, blah. And that is not what this video is about, okay? This video is for the people who used to have a very high sex drive, and because of their lifestyle decisions, they are now struggling with that. First of all, what I want to do is basically I'm going to use the Minnesota starvation experiment kind of just as a little foundation to talk about this. And I know a lot of people hate the Minnesota starvation experiment, but the reality of it is that it is one of the only long-standing research study or experiment that we have on a larger scale about starvation. I could easily just pull up emails from girls that I've worked with who've said, I don't have a sex drive, and use those isolated cases, but I like to use the Minnesota starvation experiment because it's on a grander scale. If you have no idea what I'm talking about when I say the Minnesota starvation experiment, basically back in the early to mid 1900s, there was a doctor named Dr. Ansel Keys, and he decided to do an experiment on humans to see what the effects of starvation or semi-starvation would be like during that time, and like what they would experience mentally, physically, emotionally, or physiologically, all of that type of stuff. He ended up getting 36 grown men to sign up for the experiment. These men were just normal, healthy, everyday men. They never had any issues with food or exercise or whatever from what they knew, and they basically just signed up and they're like, yeah, let's do this, let's see what it's going to be like to practically starve, which from today's standards really wouldn't be considered starvation from a lot of people's point of view, which it legit is. Basically the way that it worked was they did a few months where the guys were giving 3,200 calories every single day. This was just a standard type of caloric intake for just everyday grown man. He just kind of monitor them and watch them and just see, how they acted and what their thought processes were like and their, all their physiological functions. They went into a 6-month semi-starvation phase, okay? And during the semi-starvation phase, the men were fed typically around 1,570 calories a day. So about 1,600 calories a day. And in addition to being on the 1,600 calorie-ish a day diet, they also were required to walk 22 miles a week, okay? So that translates into being about 3 miles a day, give or take a little bit. He did this for 6 months, and during that full 6 months, basically he just studied everything about them. They had interviews, measured their blood pressure and their weight, and he would increase or decrease their calories based on how much weight they were losing and how quickly they were losing it. So at the end of the 6 months, they went through a rehabilitation phase, and this rehabilitation phase was actually restricted in the terms that they weren't able to just eat as much as they wanted to. They were only allowed to eat a certain amount. I think it was around 2,000 or 2,400 calories is what it went up to. They did this for a little while, and he started to notice that they weren't really improving. Going from 1,600 to 2,000 or a little bit over really wasn't showing that much of improvement in the men. At the end of that, he gave them an unrestricted phase where they were able to just eat however much they wanted to, and a lot of the men would eat upwards of 10,000 calories a day. They were eating until they literally could not put another piece of food in their mouth. They were like so physically full, but they were still like, their mind was still telling them eat, 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 like you were still so hungry. Some of them had to have their stomach pumped. Literally in the span of 6 months, they went from just being a normal everyday man to basically looking like a Holocaust survivor. And in addition to that, they got to where they were saying they were only interested in food. That's all they focused on. That's all they would read about. They would watch food shows. They would read cookbooks. They would literally sit there and savor every bite of food. They would add extra water to the food to make it look more voluminous. They would chew gum all day long to try to keep their appetite down. They would do all these type of little ways of making it seem like they were eating more when they really weren't. but they started to really suffer both mentally and physically, specifically from a sex drive standpoint. So back in the documents, a lot of the guys talk about how they started to lose their sex drive. They weren't interested in sex anymore. Not just sex, but by the way, they were also not interested in politics or their original hobbies. Even some of the guys, after going through the starvation period, they were like engineers or something like that, and they quit being engineers because they wanted to go be chefs. So their whole focus on the other things in life that they enjoyed now went away, and it was all about food all the time. The whole thing with the sex drive, one of the guys said that actually he took this girl out on a date and they went to go see a movie, and instead of being interested in the girl and instead of being really attracted to her, all he could focus on was the movie, specifically the parts where in the movie the characters were eating food. So it was just food, food, food all the time. A lot of them had no sex drive, and they didn't care anymore. Like, their whole life was revolving around food. So what I want to ask you specifically is, I want you to compare yourself with these guys, okay? And I want you to just ask yourself a few questions. First of all, I want you to ask yourself, how many calories are you specifically eating every day? Most of the magazines that you read today, most of the diet programs out there are gonna put you around 1,000 or 1,200 or 1,400 or 1,600 calories a day, and that's what they consider to be healthy. One of the myths out there that you might have come across is that if you wanna weigh 120 pounds, then all you need to do is add a 0 to the end of that goal weight that you have, and that will tell you how many calories that you need to eat a day. So for 120 pounds, you need to eat 1,200 calories. Or if you want to weigh 100 pounds, then you need to eat 1,000 calories. Or if you want to weigh 150 pounds, then you eat 1,500 calories. And I can honestly tell you that is the furthest thing from the truth. You can do that, but at some point you're going to get to where you're like these guys, literally. The second question that I want you to ask yourself is, how long have you been doing this? Okay, have you been doing this just a few weeks? Has it been a few months? Has it been years? Because for them, they only did this for 6 months. A lot of people nowadays have been dieting for years and years and years. So it's not just this controlled 6-month thing. It could possibly be 9 months or a year or 2 years. And then also, I want you to ask yourself, what type of exercise are you doing? The interesting thing about these guys was that they were only walking 22 miles extra per week. They, on top of their just normal everyday activities, they weren't required to run marathons. They weren't required to do excessive exercise like in the gym. They weren't lifting a ton of weights. They weren't doing any of that. All they were doing was walking literally like a little bit over 3 miles every day. Are you at the gym every day? Are you spending hours in the gym? Are you running all the time? Are you doing just a ton of extra exercise? Then I want you to ask yourself how all of these things are combined, okay? How long have you been dieting? How much have you been eating? And how much are you exercising? Because especially compared to what these guys are doing, okay? So if they're eating 1,600 calories a day, which to maybe you consider that a lot of food, and they're only walking 3 miles a day, and they only did this for 6 months, and they got these type of outcome or results or negative side effects, then no wonder you are experiencing all of these things with the things that you've put your body through, right? So let's just take an everyday girl that I would work with, and let's say that she is eating 1,200 calories a day, she's running 5 miles a day, and she has been doing this for a year now. What do you think the outcome is going to be? Is she gonna lose weight? Sure, she's probably gonna lose weight, just like these guys lost weight. But at some point, just like these guys, she is going to start experiencing episodes of binging, and then she might even eat to where she feels sick. She might eat upwards of 10,000 calories a day. She might start to see that all she can think about is food. She might start to see that she's way more interested in reading about food or watching food TV shows or looking at pictures of food on Instagram or watching a lot of like what I eat in a day videos, or her life is just starting to revolve around food. Or maybe her interests in life are starting to change a little bit. Maybe she used to be really interested in like art and acting or photography or playing the piano or something like that, but now all her life is about food and diet and fitness, and it's just completely changed who she is as a person. Now let's talk about, why do you lose your sex drive when this happens? Well, the biggest thing about this is that your body, literally, its goal is survival, okay? That is your body's goal, especially when things start to go crazy. When you're not eating enough, when you're exercising too much, when there's a combination of all these things going on, whether it's sleep or stress or whatever, your body sees that as a threat. And anytime that it's chronically threatened like that, it starts to say, okay, there is a breakdown in the system. I'm not so concerned about these peripheral things going on around me. Instead, I'm concerned about keeping this body alive. And so one of the things that your body will do is it will shut down its sex hormones to where you don't have the desire to have sex. Both in the men and women, your body physiologically says, we're not going to have a sex drive, because a sex drive means that there's a chance of procreation and creating a child. And if you create a child in this horrible environment of overexercise and not enough food or whatever, then that's not going to be a good thing, because then the child can't survive. So instead of being in an abundance of calories and an abundance of stress-free living and all of that, what we're going to do is we're going to shut it down so you don't want to have sex, so you can't procreate, because that was no type of environment for a child to grow up in. Here's the thing that I want to remind you of, is that in your mind, you're thinking, well, I'm not doing anything crazy. I mean, I'm not stranded on a deserted island. I'm not just, trying to kill fish in the ocean for my food to survive. I'm not, doing anything crazy like that. Like, I'm literally just getting up and I'm going to my local gym and I'm working out with my friends and I'm doing the spin class, or I'm running on the treadmill or whatever. And then I'm eating like my little calorie counted out meals because my trainer told me I need to do macro counting. And, I'm not really doing anything crazy. I mean, I just want to be healthy. I just want to be fit. Like, I just want to be skinny. I want to lose some weight. And while all those things might be good intentioned, your body doesn't see it that way. Your body doesn't see it from your perspective. Your body sees it from a survival perspective. So as far as your body is concerned, you might as well be on a deserted island, walking around all day, hardly eating anything, and being constantly stressed out, because your body doesn't know that, you're going for a run on the treadmill in an air-conditioned environment with your best friend next to you talking about boy drama or whatever. What your body thinks is, I'm stuck on a deserted island, I'm running down the beach, running from a tiger or something like that. Your body doesn't care so much about what you perceive to be the reality of your situation. Your body's whole thing is, we have to survive. And so a big part of that is we have to shut down these sex hormones. This is why a lot of people, specifically who are like in bikini competitions or bodybuilding or whatever, they start to cut their calories so they can start losing body fat. I can talk to any of my friends who are in the bikini competition sector or whatever, and a ton of them will always say, I lose my sex drive or I lose my period when I do this, because your body is saying, this is not a good environment for me to be in. So if it's not a good environment for this body to be in, it's definitely not a good environment to bring another being into this world in. And it's all about survival. So going back to the Minnesota starvation experiment participants, the big question is, well, when do I get it back and how do I get it back? Well, obviously, it's like I talked about in one of my other videos a few weeks ago, it's this whole energy imbalance. When you starve yourself, when you overexercise and you do all this stuff, your imbalance of your body is just messed up, like big time. Your body is saying, I need to get back up here. So your body is going to seek out food. That's where you're going to feel like you're a binge eater, because you just eat and eat and eat. And again, in your mind, you're saying, this is crazy. I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't have enough self-control or discipline. I need to stop eating so much. But your body's like, I need calories. I need food. So it's going to make you eat specifically high calorie foods. That's why you always binge out on junk food. But just like the Minnesota starvation experiment, these guys literally went through a time of refeeding. They gained their weight back plus a little bit. And for a lot of them, they noted that their sex drive didn't really get back to normal like it was before. For some of the guys, it was up to a year. So it can take some time. Obviously, everyone is going to be different, but at the end of the day, the whole point of this is for you to understand that when these type of things happen, specifically due to the fact that, you've been extreme dieting or extreme exercising or whatever, then that's most of the time the issue. And if you can fix those issues, then you'll basically fix your problem. Now, I do want to throw another disclaimer. I'm not saying that everyone will lose their sex drive. That's not what happens. But if you are having issues with this and that's something that you really want to consider and start to think through and just basically go back to the beginning and say, when did I start changing things? When was there a drastic change in my lifestyle or my diet or my exercise or my stress or my sleep? Or when were these things like seriously messed up, and how can I get back to normal? And yes, your body's going to go through a time of healing and changing, and that's just a part of it. A lot of people say, well, you just need to increase your fat intake. That could definitely be it. For a lot of people, if you're on an extremely low fat diet and you see that you don't have a sex drive, try increasing your fat intake. Or a lot of people find that when they eat an extremely low carbohydrate diet, they will also experience that as well. So you might want to consider increasing your carbs. Obviously, an extreme low calorie diet can do the same thing. So you just want to be careful with that. Get back to where you were. I talk a lot about this in my Get Your Period handbook if that's something that you're interested in. It's not just about getting your period back. It's about disordered eating and exercise and all that kind of stuff. If you're interested, that's below. If you guys have had any type of experience with this, maybe you lost your sex drive at one point, or you got it back, or how'd you get it back, or whatever, please leave that below so that other people can be encouraged and take some stuff from that. So hope you guys have an awesome day, and I will see you next time. Bye.